Welcome to the B-Sides and Beers podcast.
Welcome to B-Sides and Beers episode 57. Tonight we're hanging with Brandon Frey, Sales and Marketing Manager at TOWNSITE Brewing out of Powell River, BC. How's it going?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me on, guys. Appreciate it.
Have you. Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah,
Stoked.
We got your beer like the first kind of we had this a string of hosts or guests that joined us, and you were one of the first breweries to respond back. So first of all, we appreciate that immensely, and you're also
right
one of
on.
the first breweries to send us beer in the mail, and that was like Christmas morning.
Amazing.
Christmas.
We were all like,
Well, we do what we can, right? I mean, we're in this COVID world, and so beer should definitely be able to pass through the mail undisturbed, right? So,
Oh my
here
gosh,
are.
we were all like, so are you guys holding on to yours? I was like, I'm halfway done mine.
Yeah,
It's too
Yeah.
good.
Well, I noticed someone. I forget who it was. Someone cracked into the lemon lime ghosts on Instagram, and I was like, oh, okay, nice, like right into it. I like it.
I couldn't wait. That was the first one I cracked, and it was fantastic and unlike anything that I've had before, I think. So
that's the one that
good.
saved.
Right
That
on.
saved. I
Yeah.
saved
I mean,
that
the-
one for tonight. So that's the only one that did make
Oh,
it
wow.
to this
There you
point.
go.
So.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I mean, the sun is kind of still shining here, so it's a sunny time beer, right? That kind of Gosa sour, salty, tart-like beer, right? So perfect for drinking on a beach somewhere. Yeah.
Gosa, yeah.
Gosa. Yeah. So we do like a lemon lime version, which is the version that you guys have, and then we also do a white peach version, a passion fruit version, and then we'll be coming out with a new one hopefully later this year too. So we'll have kind of that Gosa lineup that maybe one day finds itself into a 4-pack that we sell separately outside of all our other
That would be
beers.
amazing.
That sounds awesome.
What? Okay.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you then. That maybe I wanted to ask somebody for a while, but this is a good timing. But what is the difference then? Is it just the lemon lime in this that makes this sour? Or is a Gosa sour normally? And then if it is, why is that different than like just a sour?
Yeah, so this one is a little bit more sour because of that reason, right? So of the lemon lime kind of citrus tartness that comes out of the fruits that we're adding to this one. But it also is a soured wheat beer base first, right? So we sour the beer separately and then add whatever we want to it. Usually it's fruit of some kind that pairs well with that kind of acidic tart note to that style of beer, right? So passion fruit, white peach. I know there's other guys out there that do pineapple, mango, guava, you name it. Anything that's kind of light and tart and tropical, it'll kind of pair well with that underlying sour base for the wheat beer there. And then so like the history behind that is the Gosa beer is actually from this little German town called Goslar, and there's a river that runs through it, and the percentage of salt running through this river is higher than other places. So these beers that typically come out of this little town, they're naturally just more more tart and have that salinity to it. So that saltness when you take that sip, and then that aftertaste, it just kind of melts away, and it's just really nice and refreshing. That's kind of what everyone's trying to emulate from this little town in Germany. So a little bit of lore for you. Yeah.
Super interesting. I always thought it was like a farmer thing, like trying to get the fizz back in your beer and just put a little salt in it. But
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of fun and funky things that brewmasters can do with a number of different things, right? Like that you can make a rice beer and not really have any sort of barley or traditional grains in it, right? You can add rice and pull the sugars from the rice, and it changes the flavor profile of the beer 100%, right? So it's interesting what you can actually make alcohol out of, as long as you've got sugar meets yeast meets water, can pretty much do anything there, right? So it's a pretty neat process that takes place, right?
Yeah.
So
well, we found something similar too with hops, where what was it, last week we were talking, and they mentioned, they were talking a certain fruit flavor to it, or fruit, I don't know the right word for it, but anyway, that how the hops kind of has a fruity taste, or a part of this hops opens up a sugar from this other thing that makes it taste like something that doesn't have fruit in it at all.
Yeah, exactly. There's a huge array of hops that have different characters to them, and you could dive into this. And our brewmaster Cedric, who actually hails from Belgium, he goes down that rabbit hole, right? Whereas like I stay surface level, and I'm the guy that sells those flavor notes and whatnot, but he's going down into like how acidic it is, what are the notes that are coming out of this particular hop, how does this hop work with this other hop. There's a lot of IPAs out there that are called like the C hop IPAs, like the Cascade, the Centennial, the Citra hops, all of those that kind of work well together. And so that's kind of the traditional West Coast IPA. You'll see a lot of those hops in there, and that's where those flavors of kind of pininess, resiny, but then Citra kind of, the Citra is called Citra for exactly that reason. It has citrus flavors to it. So they kind of, marriage or pair well together inside like the same beer. And then you start to dial in, like, we're going to do, X amount of this hop and X and, a smaller amount of this hop and see what we get. Right. And then there's other hops entirely that other breweries use that, have an entirely different hop profile. And that changes the beer tremendously from, adding hops into the boil, which pulls out the bitterness, or dry hopping, which actually just adds more of an aromatic tendency to the beer that you're adding the hop to. And that just means adding it after the fact and letting them kind of stew in the water and pulling out the oils from it, rather than pulling out the actual bitter flavor that comes from the hops. So there's a number of things that you can do. And my knowledge is, like I said, surface level, where, our brewmaster Cedric, he dives into all sorts of stuff. And, when I first started working for TOWNSITE in 2015, I really didn't know anything about hops, and for that matter, like craft beer in its essence in general. Right. And so I feel like I've come a long way, but it's like, if we're running a marathon, I'm in kilometer 1 and he's way over in 40 something, right?
Yeah, that runs deep. Like it just, it goes, wow.
Yeah.
Science.
Did Cedric bring any monk recipes along with him? Any monk recipes from Belgium?
Any monk recipes? Yeah. So he loves West Verleteren 12 and like all those old school like Abbey ales and Trappist ales and things like that, right? So he's huge into. We actually have our own foeder that we add like our own beer base to, and then the foeder inside, which is basically like a giant barrel on its side, and the top is open, and you pour the beer in, and then the different wild yeast strains kind of live in the wood. And each time you add more beer to it, the complexity of those yeast strains that are kind of living in the wood, it just gets more and more complex, right? And so he's able to kind of use that sort of old school way of making beer to just like pull out so many different flavors and like you name it, right? So, and we actually have this local yeast strain that just kind of gets inoculated into our beer if we were to do like an open air beer. And it actually gives like a bit of a red berry flavor, which is just like awesome. Cause like if we were to take the air and put it in our beer, like it just kind of through this process, it's like alchemy. We just get red berry notes. So it's like, all right, we can work with that.
Weird.
Very cool.
So cool.
Yeah. If that isn't a plug for come to Powell River because the air tastes like berries, I don't know what is. Yeah.
Well, hey, Brandon, I don't know if you've listened to us before, but we like to kind of snap it around at the beginning just to see what everybody's drinking. And since I know two of these guys have already drank the TOWNSITE beer that they received.
They were too good. They couldn't wait. Too good.
Well, let's go with the guest first. So what are you drinking?
So I guess I'll be plugging our own beer here. So it's our Century Grove Chocolate Orange Stout that we came out with this past winter. So we got a few flats left of this one, but basically this is our kind of our take on like a Terry's Chocolate Orange. So we added blood orange to it with cacao nibs, and you don't need to smash any chocolate to get the flavor out of this guy. So crack it open and go. Yeah,
sounds so tasty. Dane, what do you got?
I've got a Zunga. Is that how you pronounce it? The blonde ale?
Yeah, Zunga.
One of my favorites. This beer is so
nice.
good. Yeah.
Right on.
Yeah, I don't know what else to say other than it's really good. I find a lot of blonde ales a bit too sweet. And sticky. I don't even know if that's like a way to describe them.
Sure, yeah.
Sweet and sticky, but
yeah.
this one is really nice as far as a blonde ale goes.
Yeah, that one's supposed to be like nice and light-bodied, crisp and clean, easy drinking, refreshing, like 5.2%. So you can session that beer at the beach or on the top of a mountain after a hike, you name it, right? So, and fun fact about the name Zunga, that's a term that's actually specific to just Powell River, and it actually means rope swing over water. And so people will come into town and they'll ask like, "Where's the best Zunga in town?" or the locals just know where all the Zungas are, and you can just go out to the lakes and swing on a Zunga and splash in the water, right? So it's a rope swing, but we call them Zungas.
I
in
thought
town.
it was Tarzan, so thanks for clearing that out. When I saw it.
Yeah, I know. Eh? Well, if that's the thing, if you were to search like hashtag Zunga on Instagram, like that, you're gonna get into some interesting bathing suit choices.
Right on.
Think Borat. If you think Borat, you know where Zunga is. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, there you go.
I've got one more that I have to do a shout out for because I have been familiar with Superflux. I know Superflux rocks. I've had this beer before, Color and Shape, a couple of years ago. I had it on tap and I drank a lot of it, and it was good back then, and kind of just like forgot about Superflux because it's like they're so good. It's just like I gotta give other people a chance, and they're fine. And so last night I went back to Superflux Color and Shape, and holy smokes, is it ever a good beer? It's delicious. So I'm gonna crack that one for myself.
Can I see you got the can on that?
Nice.
Yeah, they've got funky stuff going on.
Oh yeah, they're all about the colors and the patterns. It's phenomenal. They always pop on the shelf, and they make phenomenal beer. It's true. Like they're top tier brewers when it comes to breweries that I personally think about when it comes to making a good beer, like Superflux, Four Winds, Strange Fellows. Like those guys are just making phenomenal beers, right? So good choice.
And you know what? You guys are up there too, because we've had a couple breweries on the show, and whenever we mention TOWNSITE, they're like, "Oh, we love what those guys are doing." So I think you guys are up on that, and that upper echelon.
Nice.
Echelon.
Oh, that's great to hear. Thanks.
Michael, I don't know about you, but I'm not getting any of that beer up here. Any of the Superflux, I'm not. I can't.
No,
Really?
I haven't found
I
any
can't
of it.
get any of that.
Although I have found, because we keep talking about the stuff off the island that we can't get here inland, and today I found, I think anyway. So Nanaimo, BC, that's on the island, yes.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Okay, so I got probably one of my first from the island. One of them, anyway.
What you got?
First in memory. So this is from Wolf Brewing Co. out of Nanaimo. And it is a golden honey ale. Oh, yeah. And I've had like 4 swigs out of it, and I think this is the best honey ale I've ever had. And
right on.
I'm quite
words.
I'm quite stoked about this because Flip and I have gone through the honeys for years and years and years, and there's certain go-tos that we have, and it's difficult to find something that pops. And this, I'm floored by this one. So
nice, right on. Is it because there's a lot of honey, or because it's balanced, or what really sings it for you there?
It's just very balanced. Like when you look into a Newcastle or Caribou honey or like they kind of have their own thing, but I think they're like there's a little more the honey and the bitter on the higher end or like of the scale, and I think this one's just it's super balanced and yeah, it's fantastic. So
Nice, good find.
really excited about that one tonight. Yeah, and
Right
the
on.
other one that I have is where is this from? Backroads Brewing Co. out of where is this? Nelson. Is this Nelson, BC? Yeah, Nelson, BC. So this is a layer cake chocolate cherry stout limited release, and I'm all about the stouts as much as possible, and anytime I can do a chocolate cherry something, I'm down.
Nice can on that too. Yeah.
I haven't
Wow.
cracked this yet, but yeah, it looks fantastic, and the artwork's really cool too. So
That sounds like a decadent
yeah,
beer.
a nice dessert beer. I mean, when you find these, it's you grab one and you save it till it's a nice dessert after after the fact beer.
It's a nice dessert
good.
after dessert,
Exactly,
right?
exactly. So that's what I got.
And kind of backpack on that. Just want to rep because I kept the can, the oatmeal stout, which I
got it
really
too.
like this one.
So
Oh,
good.
nice. Yeah.
Storm.
That's one of our core beers. Yeah. So we've got the Zunga Blonde Ale, the Suncoast Pale, and then the Perfect Storm Oatmeal Stout is kind of our top three. And then we've got our Tin Hat IPA, which is a West Coast IPA that kind of rounds out our core beers. And all of those recipes have been around since the start of the brewery. So this is actually our 10th year, our 10th anniversary.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
This month. Yeah. Yeah. So those recipes have been around the entire time, which, the traditional beers I guess it's just like the seasonal beers that kind of come and go. And, it's actually surprising that the sour beers have stuck around for as long as they have. Because I think a lot of people in the industry just thought it might have been a sort of a flash in the pan, and they've stood the test of time. Right. So, they're right up there, like 1 and 2 as far as sales go. It's like IPA and sour beers are like the king and queen of sales right now.
Yeah,
So
unreal.
interesting to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And where does your Mystery Reef hazy IPA sit in that? Is that just a seasonal, or is that?
Yeah, it used to be a seasonal, and then we tweaked the recipe a little bit, and yeah, just kind of made it better and better, and then found that it really worked. Last year, we just changed the recipe a little bit, and then it was just where we wanted it, or where the brewers wanted it, and it was a phenomenal hazy. Like, we were actually pretty late into the hazy game, and just seeing what everyone else was kind of doing, and then because we have a sort of a traditional brewmaster. He may have kind of looked at it as like it's maybe not the most traditional of styles, but it certainly was an up and coming style, right? And so we wanted to put our hat in the ring there and see what we could do, and I think we came up with something good. So that's basically become a part of our core lineup, along with our Vidal Lager, which actually won us gold at the BC Beer Awards back when we were able to all drink in the same room together. So
the
that
BC Beer
I
Awards.
think 2019, and then COVID hit. Yeah.
I would tell us about that.
Yeah.
Is that still a thing?
I think it will be a thing this year, if I'm not wrong. But the last 2 years it was canceled just because we couldn't get together, and it was just it kind of fell to the wayside, like many festivals and get-togethers did during COVID, right? So, but I think it's back this year, and I think the Canadian Brewing Awards, I think that actually took place, because that was more of just send your beer in and hope you win kind of thing, so I think that took place this year. But I think the awards for the BC beers will be back. It's usually September, October, around that time. So hopefully by then, fingers crossed, we're good to go.
Very
Yeah.
cool. Do you know where that's being held? Is it always held in the same place, or does it kind of move around?
Yeah, the BC Beer Awards, it's usually in Vancouver, and it was at the Croatian Culture Center for a number of years before COVID. So maybe they're looking at that same spot. I'm not sure, but it's usually in Vancouver. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah, we need an on-location podcast recording from the BC Beer Awards.
I was just gonna say we need some hats with like the little press tag, like in the band.
on the red carpet at the BC
interviewing
Beer Awards.
everybody walking in.
For sure.
Hey, there's Brandon from TOWNSITE.
Yeah.
What are you wearing?
Who wore it?
Get that old timey camera where it just like makes everyone go blind for 5 minutes. Yeah.
Who wore it better? And
Yeah.
The future. I like that. We really noticed as soon as we open up the beer, though, the artwork on the can like is ridiculous. And who does that? And like, how does like the wrap, I guess, work too on this? You know, like I've always kind of wondered. It's kind of gone to. It feels like it's gone to this wrap look rather than it being on the can. So yeah, if you can kind of speak to that.
Yeah. And that's just kind of like a basically like the issue with supply and demand and pricing and things like that. So you see a lot of breweries go with the wrap these days because it's just cost effective, to be honest. Like we were doing shrink wrap on our cans for a while. We didn't actually have our own canning line. We had a mobile canning company come up and can for us. West Coast Cans, shout out. And they came up and Mile 51 came up and helped us out for the canning. But it's just a cost-effective measure for us. Like we did shrink wrap to begin with, and then we went to the sleeves because we eventually got our own canning line, and we are also able to label our own cans too. So it's just the labor on our side makes it easier on the pocket for the brewery to do it all in-house. So that's how that's kind of presented. But the artist for the cans, his name's Ian Adams, and he's over in Courtney Comox area.
You know what? I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, Ian?
Yeah. He did sorry to cut you off. He did a big mural in there's a pub called Church Street Tap House. Yeah, and he did a big like underwater mural. And I've actually been to anyway, he paints surfboards and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, so he had like a little shop downtown called I guess it's Rome now. But he used to do like it almost looked like animals made out of ribbons that were on the shirts. I don't know if you've seen them around, but he's also done stuff for like Ten Tree and stuff, like for their line, whatever. So he's a pretty well-established digital illustrator and media guy. And I saw him for the first time doing his stuff on the cover of the, what's it called? The CVC magazine. It's like his magazine, the Comox Valley Collective. And I saw him on the front, his digital illustrations, and he had put out, I think maybe 3 or 4 by then. And I was like, we need this guy on our cans. Like he just gets what the West Coast, like he gets that West Coast feeling, and he gets the coastal feeling of that West Coast, living on the island and so close to the coast there. And so I reached out to him, and the rest is history. And him and I worked together on the ideas behind the illustrations, the digital illustrations. And so for something like this, like the Century Grove, it's like a camping site, right? So it's a bunch of red, orange, and yellow tents around a campfire. And I just had this idea, like, can we do something like this? And I just give him like a couple notes, and he's like, oh, something like this, and he sends it back to me, and I'm like, that you just pulled that out of my head. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. So him and I work together really well, and he's a phenomenal guy, and he just does exceptional work time and time again. It's awesome to work with him, and it's really elevated our brand, our brewery. Our cans now pop on the shelf, whereas before we were kind of stuck into the bomber or the bottle game because we didn't have our own canning line. We had to have Mile 51 come up and help us out with that, and it was just small batches. So we were really kind of taking those baby steps to get into the can game. But once we did, I wanted to make sure that we were established as we make good beer, and we want to show it on the outside of the can and really kind of talk true to what it means to like live on the coast and what you can get out of Powell River and the Sunshine Coast in general. So you can see on all our cans, it's like the Zunga Swing or
the perfect storm. We have a little bit of fun there with the sort of ferry life, right? With the Kraken sort of taking down the ferry, and all the storms that we have to put up with. And sometimes we're island locked or landlocked, and we can't go anywhere because a storm comes in and the ferries are shut down, right? So we can't go anywhere. And then Mystery Reef, where it's an underwater, it's a beautiful, colorful scene. The ghostes with the octopus. So between the colors and the culture of living on the coast is kind of that 1-2 punch that we really wanted to play around with on our labels, right? So
awesome.
Yeah,
That's awesome. I think it speaks true. It's definitely there.
Yeah, this perfect storm art is it's my favorite. Love the Kraken.
So that's all
so
Ian.
cool.
Like
So cool.
some things I say like, hey, I think this would be a good idea. Let's go in this direction, and then he'll come back and just kind of blow me away every time. So it's great. Yeah, makes my job very easy.
I think it's such a
artist.
great marriage, like artists and beer makers. And it seems as though, and I could be wrong, like, this is something which is in the past maybe 5 years, something which is a lot of smaller craft breweries are really embracing. And I mean, how fun is that? How fun is that to make art for like a brewery? It sounds like peanut butter and jelly, like they go together, right?
For sure.
Like,
And then just the community that comes along with it, right? Like I wanted to make sure that the person that was making our labels was also, not necessarily in Powell River, but local in a sense, like and got that sort of coastal vibe that we were looking for our labels and just our image in general, right? So I just I couldn't be more pleased with it. It's great.
So does he, and just on that, lastly, like for any kind of those new seasonal beers or anything, do you contact him with all of those as well? Is he kind of just on call for all these different ones that come out, and it's just like, I need, another Kraken, or I need, something else on it, like
keep him on retainer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. He's our illustrated lawyer and on retainer. No, I mean, like every time we come up with a different beer, it'll be sort of first and foremost, what does the brew house want to do? And I'll have a conversation with them on, like, I think that would actually do really well in the market right now. Let's do that. Right. So we're kind of projecting, 6 months, 8 months, 12 months in advance on like what beer we want to do. And so it gives me a lot of time to work with Ian on how to go about what we want it to feel like when it hits the shelves, right? So, for instance, like we did a wee heavy and we called it Sky's the Limit. And the imagery is like a sort of purple and pink and yellow treehouse in this sort of darker dusk setting. And that was sort of to pay tribute to 3 staff members that were turning 30 this year. And so it was kind of like the clubhouse that they were coming into, the 30 plus clubhouse. And so we just want to have a little bit of fun with that and play around. And so that was the idea that we kind of had stirring about between us at the brewery. And so I brought it to Ian, and then he just brings it to life, right? So it's phenomenal that like I wish I could do that. I went to school for photography and sculpture and things like that back in Ontario, but never really got into illustrating, and especially with using programs like Procreate and Illustrator and things like that. Like there's like you can do anything with a laptop or an iPad these days. So it's pretty cool.
Brandon, we're here to tell you that the 40 plus clubhouse is decrepit and broken down, so needs a lot of repairs.
I feel like the maintenance
so broken.
The maintenance as you go up that treehouse level, it just gets
things
worse
are leaking.
and worse.
And wraps are coming in, and things are just creaking. Hey, let's shift gears, because we've been doing a lot of beers and B-sides, and we want this is also a music show, and we want to talk thousands screamo punk, as you have pitched towards us. So since it's your pick, we kind of just want to lob it out to you first and just kind of give us why you pick that and who your bands are in
you one of those
this genre.
Were you one of the
sure.
kids with the asymmetrical hairdo or haircut and the?
Yeah, the aggressive arm swinging when you're at the show, right? Yeah. Yeah. No, like I grew up in southwestern Ontario, in a little town called Waterdale.
Nice.
Just north of Hamilton, 45 minutes west of Toronto. And so I just we were extremely fortunate to come up right at the sort of golden era of that screamo pop punk
post-hardcore kind of
scene. That's that scene that was just exploding at the time. So, and all these bands that were local to us were touring around all of Canada and all of the states. And so it's weird to hear people my age and older traveling around the states, or like going to California or going to Colorado or wherever. And, you know, it just comes up in conversation that like, oh yeah, you know, like my favorite, you know, bands growing up were Boys Night Out and the Full Blast and, you know, like all these guys that we grew up with. And, you know, we were going to the YMCA shows and local shows where they were just coming up. Like I remember watching Alexis on Fire when they were like no one. God. And we were watching them in like the local, like 10 minutes away from our house. We're watching Alexis on Fire. And, you know, Dallas Green and George and all these guys are just like hammering away. And, you know, I don't know if people know, but Alexis on Fire, like old years, and Alexis on Fire now are two completely different sounds, right? Like, did you guys listen to those?
100%. Well, their old stuff, old stuff to their new stuff, it still has the Alexis sound. I mean, when you still have George and you still have Dallas and you have, you know, Wade McNeil in there. And they're just, you know, they're crushing it from, you know, the start when they started off right out of high school, or some of them still in high school to now. I mean, it's still, you know, the vein is still there, but yeah, they've definitely changed a little bit, but yeah.
You can see growth though. I mean, there's growth from, you know, the post-hardcore, what they were doing, kind of math rocky, crazy stuff going on to, I mean, the new single that's out now. Really very simple, effective, but very, you know, a very minimalist approach. So yeah,
for sure. Like that, the music in the background where it's like just that ambient strumming, right, in the background, and it just kind of takes you into a different world. And I don't know if you guys have, I'm assuming you've probably seen the music video too. And it kind of just mimics that, right? Like it just seems like a dreamscape, and the music kind of emulates that, right? And then I guess, you know, like over the course of time, you have Dallas kind of removing himself from the group and then coming back in, and there's like an elevation of what he's at, like where he's at now with his musicality, and all the other guys too, and to have those roots kind of spread off into different areas, and then to kind of come back into the same area and to make that kind of music again. Like it's fun to watch. It's fun to watch from the early ages of like what they thought, like what their hearts were saying and how they wanted to sort of put that music out there, and what the era was sort of tailored to at the time, and where they end up now, like 20 odd years later, right? It's pretty cool to see. And like, you know, just listening to like classic rock, and then having our parents sort of grow up and like having that sort of relationship with their music, and like we're like, you know, like that's it's rock, but it's not our rock, right? But there's that disconnect that still happens, you know, where like you just see that passage of time, and then you get thrown back into it, and it's cool to see. Like I love the reunion tours too. Like those are starting to pop up because we're getting older and older, and it's like here's the 15-year anniversary of like Moneen's Red Tree, and like all those other guys that are coming out with their anniversary releases of either the disc itself, the record itself, or they're actually putting on a show. And you can put money on that I'm gonna definitely fly back to Ontario for those shows. So it's, you
awesome.
You know, like if there's some sort of version of nostalgia there, like I'll pay good money, and they know I'm gonna pay good money for it. So it's just a fun genre to have grown up in, like just in this little town, but it was huge at the time.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, I've got some family from St. Catharines, Ontario, and that's where Alexis is from. So I thought that was, when they first came out, I started hearing bits and pieces of this band. And then, once you really get into it, it's like, hey, that's pretty cool. Just sort of that little degrees of separation kind of a thing. So, yeah.
Right. And like for you guys, sorry to kind of flip it back on you, but I'm seeing a lot of instruments in the background here. So like, were you guys ever at one point like a band together collectively? And if so, like what kind of music were you guys playing when you guys were growing up?
Silence. I love it.
And that's all we have. That's it.
You know what, Reddit? You know why nobody took that is because nobody knows how to answer that question. I think that's probably what the answer is. The first part of that answer is yes, we did play together in a band. And as far as the music that we played, I don't...
It was rock, funky rock, bluesy rock.
Yeah, mostly kind of like a blues rock. But for the most part, we would start off having, I'd always try to have some sort of heavy riffs in there, and then we'd end up going to some 10-minute blues jam, or, it would just kind of do these weird little offshoots, but into like some sort of a Zeppelin cover, or into, that kind of a vein. But yeah, that was what 99 to I think 2005 was the absolute death of it.
Right. And were you guys like obviously like bluesy rock? Was there ever sort of a crossover to like the music that sort of I grew up with in our area, and what you guys were sort of seeing out, sort of in the world, and like pulling elements that you're like, that sounds really awesome, let's bring that in? I don't
think our sound was. I don't know. We didn't sound like anybody else in the areas that we were doing, and the genres that the other bands that we were playing with and gigging with. We all, speaking for myself anyway, I really loved that, post-hardcore sort of punk genre things.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
But it never really trickled into what we were writing. I mean, vocally it was not that. And, if we come up with some sort of heavy riff, then, it never went in that direction. But I mean, I've always loved it since, super young, man, like 18, 19.
Oh yeah. And it was just to like follow what you're saying there, Mike. Like it was never really contrived, and I don't want to say that, but we never really wanted to fit into anything. I think we were kind of happy that, we had gigs where we played with death metal bands and they didn't beat us up, and we had gigs that we played with blues bands and we had a lot of fun. Yep. And we just sort of we were in this nice, fun gray area where it was more about just like writing cool riffs. It was more of like a jam band experience, and then we just tightened it up for the shows, I think.
Yeah, definitely.
But I think that to end with that too, on that, like all of us had different influences, right? That were all kind of trickling in as well, right? And all of us were into different music, but all of us were into like some of the same bands too, right? So there's a lot of times when you just connect on those bands and you're like, yeah, like that album is fantastic, I love that album too. And then or I have never heard that before, or I don't like that, but it's cool that you do. But all of those kind of mashed together, and it just made what we had. So which is
right. Very cool.
The cool thing about it.
Yeah, and then a couple of years back, we decided to quote unquote get the band together to we had we put out an EP when we first started in 99 or whatever, and then 2001 we did a full length, and then I think it was 2003 or 4, 3 I think, we went into the studio. We had 10 plus songs, maybe 12 songs. We started recording, and then things just kind of, everybody's lives just sort of moved in different directions, and so we never finished this album. And then about, what was it, 3 years ago, maybe
in June, 3 years.
Yeah. We decided, okay, well, let's try and finish a couple of these songs anyway.
Songs.
Yeah, let's try and finish them, and we'll re-record them.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
So,
because is there like like, are you trying to at that point sort of emulate what you were doing before to sort of finish the song in that timeline, or does it sort of like become a new song because you're doing it, say, 15 years later, and it's like you kind of tweak almost every part of it, or is it just like the sort of base layer of that song is there, and then you kind of pepper in this 15 year later kind of addition
I'm
to
gonna
it? Like
say it was both, a little of both. I mean, we went through the list, we picked out the 4 strongest songs, or the 4 that we thought were the strongest, and then we just re-recorded them from scratch and added some things and updated some, better tones in guitar and bass and drums, and just kind of played around with some stuff. And then we ended up hiring off the interwebs a singer from a professional session singer out of Nashville.
Who's really good, by the way.
So good.
Oh, wow.
So good. So yeah, the project, it's called Within the Woods, and it's on all the streaming and stuff. But so he came in and he crushed it. And I mean, we had all the songs pre-recorded, we sent it to him, and then he just did his thing. And then we sent it in for mixing and mastering. A couple of the songs we had Scott Middleton from Cancer Bats mix and master.
Right on.
So he did 2 of the songs, and then I had another buddy of mine out of Calgary, Sasha from Perfect Filth recording. Anyway, he mixed and mastered the other 2, and they turned out great. So
I was just concerned that I was going to suck hard because I hadn't played my instrument in like 10 years or so. So yeah, it was.
Now, how does it work for you? Like the muscle memory, is there a bit of rust that needs to be kind of shaken off there, or did it come back pretty quick?
There's lots of
Mike, how about you? I mean,
lots of rust. Yeah. The thing is like
rust and leaks and
you just back in the day you're playing all the time, right? Like if we weren't playing, if we weren't practicing, we were playing a show, right? Like it was one of those. So we were playing lots. And we were playing lots together, which made it even tighter. So for these bands that tour for this long, it's amazing how tight they can get, right? But it's
I never let it go. It was one of those things where I was never able to find other cats to jam with, so I just continued doing my own thing and learning and focusing on things that when we were doing the band before, I found myself just plateauing at a certain level, and this is good enough, and let's just rock and have fun. And then afterwards, I put in time with actually learning some theory and learning modes and learning different. Trying to figure out how to do arrangement and production and that, like, proper sound craft or song crafting and so that kind of continues till today. I mean, I'm still doing some stuff. So, but that's probably an education that never really ends, right? It's unreal.
You just keep adding to it.
It's unreal, and especially when you get into the recording side and the production side, and dealing with plugins and mixing and it's ongoing. So
the beer, it runs deep.
That's
just
yes indeed.
There's no end to it, right? But what are some of those other bands, Brandon? Like, if you can shout out some of those names of some of those other bands that you were into.
Yeah, I mean, like I was saying, Monine was a big one of mine. Like,
was it mostly local you were into, or did you get into a lot of the bigger sort of screamo post-hardcore bands?
For me, it was mostly like whoever was around locally was just sort of in my, I mean, literally in my face, right? So we would just go and see all these guys, and but some of the bigger guys too. Like I remember one of my first shows, and getting into sort of the pop punk side of things too, because it all kind of came together at the same time. So my first show was Face to Face.
Oh, yeah.
With Newfound Glory and Taking Back Sunday, right? So I was just watching those guys and just having a great time, right? So like who else was around?
Glassjaw, did you get into them, or Thrice?
Yeah, those guys are great.
I was thinking of Thursday.
Thursday was good too. Yeah, for sure.
Poison the Well was huge for me too for a while there. So
who was
Poison the Well?
Oh, Poison the Well.
Oh, that's
killer name.
So good.
Yeah. I forgot about them too. Yeah. So like and that's the thing too. That was so cool about that era was that there was so many bands that were so
Seems
good,
like
right?
it.
And they just the bar just kept going up and up and up, and they just kept elevating each other. And a band would release their first album, and it would be not a full length, it'd be an EP, and then like 2-3 years later, you see them again, and they're coming out with this new album, and you're just blown away by where they took themselves, right? Because they're seeing everyone else, and that bar is getting raised
Yeah.
every time they go to a show and they see another local band do something different, or a different sound, or whatnot. Like I don't know if you guys know Silverstein, but like
Yep.
I would be playing hacky sack with Shane, the singer of Silverstein, at like the local Legion,
cool.
and then he's like, "Oh, sorry guys, I got to go and do a show," and so there he goes, right? So we were so embedded into the scene, and it was because we were friends with friends of people that were in the bands, or putting on the shows, at the Y, or the local Y in Burlington, or Waterdown, or there's just so many like local genre or venues that we would just kind of circle around, and our weekends in the later years of our high school would just be, that's what you're doing that weekend. You're going to a show on Friday, you're going to a show on Saturday. Afterwards, you're finding a party to go hang out at and have a few beers at, right? So it's just it just became something that we did time and time again, right? And just kind of start to live that lifestyle, and it was just, it's really nostalgic to like talk about it and like kind of bring me back there, because it was, I mean, it's kind of cliche to say, but the best years of your life are sort of those formative years, right? Where it's like that music means so much to you, and it's a part of your soul and your identity, right?
Yeah.
So for me, these bands and those times are exactly that.
Yeah, and that's why we're
sorry,
searching.
Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I said that's why we keep talking about searching for a band that something new that we like, or something new that blows us away, and it's so difficult to find anything because maybe it's not because the bands now suck, but we're just old and we don't have the same connection.
Yeah, and I think that just
it's 100%.
I think that's so true, though. I think it goes for every era of music, right? You have someone that you're in the formative years of that era or that style of music, and then you've got that sort of 5 to 10 year pocket, and then it's on to the next thing, right? But you're stuck in that boat for the rest of your life, right, with that genre of music, and you're gonna be, I have these thoughts sometimes where it's like being 90 years old, sort of in an old age home, and I'm listening to all this like screamo music, right? It's just like, this is what we listened to back in the day.
But the great thing about being old is you get to witness these resurgence of bands, right? Like Alexis is back on tour. They've got one show in Canada, but they're back on tour. Yeah. And you get to see the next generation who really appreciate the music that you did. And that's the real fun part about it. And then all of the bands inspired by the new wave of screamo, or whatever you want to call it. Like, that's, for me, I mean, I still sort of keep tabs on what's happening as far as like a couple of bands, and it's super fun, like just looking at their Instagram, what they're up to, and they're getting old just like I am, but they still have that fire, right? Like, and
you got to respect it, right? The slog that they put in just to keep their craft alive. It's phenomenal. It's like any artist, like a painter or a sculptor or a musician, like to just dedicate your life to it, because that's who you are. Like it's just phenomenal to see. And like, and then you get to see it kind of progress with their life too, right? Like, who would have thought that a guy like Bob Dylan, his entire life is, like I saw Bob Dylan, it must have been pre-COVID, so at least a couple of years ago, but he's on stage and, he's kind of singing, but not really. And it's kind of like a bunch of yammering sounds that you're like, I'm seeing Bob Dylan right now. But really it's like, it's kind of not the same, but it is. But, you can hear the ups and downs of his voice, like and so like, you're like, this is great. But, at some point, when do you call it,
Yeah,
right? And for
yeah.
him, it was never. He's just never calling it. Like he'll be dead before he's not on a stage doing his
And-
thing, right? So you have to kind of applaud that.
And then they'll bring
in
out
a
the
way, right?
hologram of him.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Then he'll live on
Yeah,
forever,
yeah.
right?
these
Yeah.
you're talking about, and kind of all these things that we're talking about, and like even the formative years that you're talking about too, Brandon. Like, I think all this though, like it kind of this common thread between all of this is live music, and like being there at the
Yeah.
show, right? And I think that we would all agree that that's what took it to the next level, right? You saw all these people and all these bands on, Much Music or whatever you're watching or listening to, and you look at the album covers and then you see it live and it's just like, oh, it comes to life, right? And all these experiences that we've all had are at these shows, right? And with these bands, and good or bad, Bob Dylan yammering on with no sound, compared to something that you saw that just blew your mind, right? It just like all those things
Yeah.
together, that's what makes that all awesome, right? And that's what I hope we can get back to, just lots of that, just
Totally.
more of
Yeah.
that.
Mike, I think you said it best. And like, I'll never forget this. And it was a show we were talking about best live shows we've ever been to. And you're just like, you described walking into like a smaller venue and just like the amps are humming and like you see all like the lights on the amplifiers and the drum kit's there just like ready to go, and like the drum kit's almost vibrating, and it's like that's what you see when you walk in and you get that like chill down your spine, like you know it's going to be a great like hour
about to
or
go
2
down.
hours. Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, and like that's the magic of it too, is that it kind of removes you from whatever it is that's happening in your life that may be, good or bad, right? Like you just get basically thrown into a different world, and for 1 or 2 hours you're focused on just this element of pure joy, right? And that's what it was growing up, is the excitement of going to these local shows and knowing that the guys out there are like pouring their hearts out on stage, and you're there to support them for sure, but you're also like you're giving back and they're giving to you, and it's this sort of two-way street that you're a part of, and you try to appreciate it when you're in it, when you're growing up, but you don't understand until later on like how important those moments were, right? And like getting into that front row and like yelling their lyrics back to them, and like them putting the mic in your mouth in your face, and you're just like getting in there and having your moment, right? And those, like, it's just so special, and that's the thing with COVID, is like we've been kind of removed from all that. And I'm really excited to get back out there and to I know that like those feelings of like that nostalgia, I mean, maybe they come back if all those bands come back and do a show or something. I don't know if you guys saw, but where was it? Vegas, when we were young, they're putting this huge show together. Yeah, so a bunch of bands that we grew up listening to, they're down there doing their thing, and obviously tickets went like that, right? So hopefully that sort of shows these bands and just the whoever's putting it on in general that there's certainly money to be made here, because there's such a need for it, like a hunger for it, right? So
everyone,
hopefully there's more at some point, and hopefully they come to Canada.
Take it like a new / old Vans Warp Tour, but with when we were young
Warp Tour,
and it comes down to the point where they're legacy acts right now. When you look at No Effects, or you look at a lot of these other bands that we were huge into, and I still love everything about them today, but just how old they look, because they are old, and you remember back when they started and they were 18, 20, whatever, doing their thing, and then you see them now and they're still doing it, but they're just different.
But then there's also like, I saw No Effects 2014, so like a while ago.
Okay.
And I started like in the front where I normally do, and the crowd got a little like whatever aggressive, and then I got popped in the nose and I was out. I went to the back, and I don't think I even finished the concert. I was like, I can't do it.
That's
I can
punk
no
rock, man.
longer
At least
receive blows to the face and still have a great time.
that's punk rock, though, man.
right.
At least you
The
didn't go
band's
to a
changing,
show
so
and
do I, man.
get shivved by a screwdriver or stabbed by whatever in these
Yeah.
the early '80s LA punk scene where it's just it's free for all and yeah.
Wow.
Thankful to just get a punch.
But
in the
yeah,
face.
that Warped Tour time too, that brings back memories. Like we had some great times there, and their run through Barrie, Ontario, is where we would go for our Warped Tour. I remember some of the dustiest, hottest days where we've all got our bandanas on, but we're still in the mosh pit and we're still doing our thing. And bands like The Offspring come out. I'll never forget it. The Offspring came out, and it was towards the end of the day, and he had this huge, it's so hot and dusty. Everyone's like dust in your ears, dust in your nose, and he comes out with this huge fire hose on stage, and he just goes click and just annihilates the entire audience with water, and we're all just
Thank you,
praising the water, right? It was just and they're playing too while this is happening, right? So pretty cool moments. But so many great bands coming through Warped Tour in the early 2000s, right? So anytime I had a chance, I was grabbing tickets for that.
very cool.
Nice. Hey, Brandon, this was a blast. It was a good time talking to you, and it was nice to talk some music too, because like I said, we've been talking lots of beer. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but we miss talking the music.
There's the other element.
It's good to jump into that, but
Yeah.
it was a pleasure. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, I'd love to come back anytime, guys.
we
Thanks so
definitely
much. It
look
was
you
great.
back up again for sure. Yeah, thank you.
Open invitation.
Yeah, boys.
Perfect.
And we
Appreciate
need to make
it.
a trip to the Sunshine Coast. I think that's
Yes.
that's got to be
Yeah.
done.
Flights on me if you guys show up. Yeah.
Timestamp that.
All right. Timestamp it.
Hopefully that sounds enticing enough. Yeah. Yeah.
All right. We want you guys to subscribe, share, and review this podcast. Keep it going. Keep it strong, because we're having a great time entertaining you guys with B-Sides and Beers podcast.